All right, let's take a look at what we have so far. Now, I've been kind of playing around a little bit in the project, getting us ready for doing some character technical stuff. So I brought in one of the Valerie players. Now, one thing is we're going to be doing some terrain editing. And if you, like me, were having issues, you weren't able to see any of your terrain stuff. So if you go in here now and you go to tools and you go to terrain editor and you don't see it, it took me a long time searching the internet to find this, but you have to go to edit, then go to editor settings, global preferences. Under this general setting, you want to turn off enable new viewport interaction. That's this. It's on, for me, it was on by default. When I did a different install, it was off by default. And then you have to hit OK, and nothing's going to happen. You have to actually restart it. So that was kind of one of the issues. All right, so I was doing a lot of thinking about what I can do to kind of change it up a little bit. And I'm thinking we might just knock out a really quick gray box of a truck inside of Blender. So you learn a little bit of Blender, and then we'll import this in. And hopefully in the same video, what we'll do is when the ball comes up to it, up to the back of the truck, we'll do a canvas script where the back of the truck goes up. So when we actually model and rig our character and I'm running around and grabbing the garbage bags, we'll at least have that interaction set up. So what you'll need for this tutorial is, I just did a search for this, which is like just blueprints of a truck. You're gonna have to right click, you're gonna have to save this image, and then I actually set up a folder in my documents called truck, just with the image that's inside of there. You're gonna need a copy of Blender. So again, what I did is I just looked for garbage, truck, blueprint, and duck. This is actually a fresh copy of Blender here. I'm just gonna go in, left click to marquee and delete everything. You know, middle mouse obviously rotates around. And I wanna bring those references into this view. So let me go ahead and just navigate to that folder. I'm gonna pause the video. All right, so a couple of things. I'm not really going to be too terribly concerned with the top view, but I can show you how to set that up. So in order to get some image planes inside here, all you have to do is just drag and drop them in the view. You can see here, now we have an empty. And let's say this one's going to be our front view. What I can do is hit Control and then G, and I can hit Control and A. And you can see I can apply like the location, rotation, and scale. I can also just hit Alt-G, and what that'll do is that'll snap it to the center of my 3D cursor. Alt-R will clear out the rotation. Did you see that? Alt-S will clear out the scaling so it's all one. So if I go like this and I hit Alt-S, oops, with this selected obviously, it'll bring it back to its initial scaling size. So what I want to do is when I go to my front view, so again, you can hit the tilde key or you can hit the number 1 if you have a numpad, and that's going to bring you to your front orthographic view. With this selected, you can play with these different rotation options, right? So here's our x-axis. So if I was to rotate this on the x-axis, 90 degrees, you can see it's there. It's a little bit of a smaller image, so I can just hit S and scale this up. You can also type in numerical values. What I want to do is only model half of this. So I'm just going to hit S. Oops, sorry. I'm going to hit G and just kind of bring it a little bit like this. So it's above the grid line. And oops. Let's see, shift and middle pans around. So I'm just gonna hit 1 again to go to my front view. And I'm just with this selected, I'm gonna do my best to just kind of line it up a little bit on that center line. It's really not a big deal because this is our gray box. And I tend to, when you're starting off, you do want to use reference like this. But if you're truly interested in improving your modeling ability, what you wanna do is look at a reference and try to eyeball it or model it to build those spatial relationships for you, like the modeling of spatial relationships in your brain. All right, so with this selected, I'm gonna hit Shift and D, and you'll notice it attached it to the cursor of my mouse. I'm actually just moving my mouse around. And what that does is, it kind of gives you this free reign thing. I don't necessarily want that. I want to hit Escape, and I want to rotate it on my Y, or I'm sorry, remember our Z is our up and down. It gets confusing jumping between different points, but I want to rotate it about 90 degrees on my Z. I could type 90 in there, but I'm going to show you another way of doing it. So if you remember, R is rotation. So if you hit R, and then the axis, which is Z, and then the number of degrees you want to move in, that's 90 degrees. So something like that. I'm going to hit that tilde key and go to my right view. And then I'm just going to grab this move tool just so I can incrementally move it this way. Another way of doing it is, notice I'm moving it on the y-axis. I can just hit G, right? That moves it, and then just Y, and then I can just slide it that way too. So it's up to you. And what I'm looking for is something like this, where it's just kind of lined up for my front and side view. What I'd like to do with both of these is lock them. I'm actually missing the selectable option. So what that is if you click here, if you turn this on, it makes it so you can or cannot select something, right? So now when I highlight over these, I can't select them, which is good if we're trying to model something. All right, let's do a quick gray box. This is not going to be the full model. It will eventually, but for now, we're just looking for it as a placeholder so we can practice a little bit of modeling in Blender, then practice a little bit of scripting. So I'm going to hit Shift and A, and I'm just going to grab a cube. I'm going to bring that in. And all I'm going to do is, starting off in my front view, what I'd like to do is start to model just half of this truck, and I'm going to jump between both of them, so front and back. And I have all these other views to sort of look at, like, oh, okay, the front of my truck is a little bit higher, these sides come around this way. So I'm going to hit Alt-Z, and that brings me into transparency mode. And another thing I can do is, if I click here, or here rather, you can see I can actually turn on wireframe. And if I click off, it gives me a little bit of a wireframe view. So that's kind of helpful. So as I mentioned, I'd like to only model half of this and have it move over to the other side. So under my modifiers tab here, I'm going to go to add modifier. And I want to turn on the my mirror, which is here. And notice as I move this around, I don't necessarily have a mirror just yet. And the reason for that is I need a object to mirror from. So I'm going to actually tab over, hit edit mode with that on, and I'm going to hit 3 and just delete this inside face. And the way to do that is to hit the X key, and you can go to faces this way. And notice that it seems like it's still there. And the reason for that is in edit mode, if I hit A, now when I press G, you'll notice that there's actually two, they were just sitting on top of each other. Okay, so let's go back to our front view for a second, and I'm gonna hit tab and go to object mode, and I'm gonna center this little dot in the middle of the truck here, so something like that. Then I'm gonna hit tab again and go back to edit mode, and then I'm gonna select my vertex here, and I'm again just boxing this out. So I'm gonna select both of these, hitting G, I'm gonna move those in a little bit, and again, if you want it more exact, you can hit G and X, and just straightening this out. Now, what would be helpful is if we had a second view where we can kind of see this in the perspective as we're modeling. So the way to do that is if you just move your cursor over to the side here, and then you right click, and it says vertical split, horizontal split. I'm gonna vertically split this and just drop it here. Now, I personally like to model in perspective in one of the views, and that's actually really easy to do. You can just click in here, and now what I can do is in this view, I could say, you know what, I'd like to start moving this element up to the front here. This view here can serve as my front or orthographic or what have you. So I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to go over to my tab rather, not tilde, and go to object mode. And I'm just going to pull this forward a little bit. In this view here, I'm going to hit tilde, I'm going to go to my right view, and I'm going to just make sure this is lined up this way. So in this view, I kind of just like to look at the way it'll appear. So here's how it would look in perspective. And Alt-Z, if you remember, turns on and off X-ray mode. So if you remember, if you're following along with the other video. All right, so in edit mode, I'm gonna, again, go in here, hit A to select all of these faces. And then with my move tool, I'm just gonna bring them a little bit closer together. So now what I can do is I can model in my right view here. I can tab over, or I can hit tilde here, and I can go to my front view here rather. And you can see now I can do my right view or my front view, and then I have my right view. So as I work along, I can sort of keep shaping. So whenever I'm approaching something that seems a little complicated, the best approach for me is always gray boxing. So what I'm gonna do is first gray box out this hood, because it seems like it has the sort of the biggest surface area for the front of this truck is this hood, and then there's these side cups this way. So let's go ahead and knock that out. So 1 is my vertex mode by pressing 1. I'm gonna move this up a little bit. I'm just gonna pull this down, and I'm not looking to add a ton of geometry here. So something like this. So any cuts that I add are going to be, again, this is a gray box, so it's supposed to be very, very simple, low in poly count. So let's bring this back just a little bit so we're lining up. Now I'd like to get a nice curve here. So some people would actually bevel that. Oftentimes with beveling, you get weird edges when it comes to a front area. So I'm just gonna do something where I hit Control and R. And what that does is that adds a ring cut. So now, let me go to perspective so you can see that. And let's get Alt Z so you can see it. So now you can see this ring here. And let's go to solid. And that ring is just another subdivision or edge. And I did that by hitting Control and R. And I'm going to select these edges here. I'm going to bring, or these verts rather, and bring them down like that. Okay. And I have a very basics, like much slower version tutorial. If you are looking for something that is a little bit more slower paced. All right, I'm actually going to say that I'm done with the hood. So let's go to my front view for the gray box. And what I'd like to do is just add these side pieces here. So let's tab over to object mode. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to go to Mesh, Cube. And with this one here, I'm just going to bring this up like this and line this up with the side here. Like that. I'm going to scale this down a bunch. And what I'd like to do is, because the inside face there isn't really going to be seen, I'm going to tab over to edit mode, select the inside face by pressing 3 to go to face mode, X, and then just delete that face. Then I'm going to tab over, go to object mode, and I'm actually going to add the same modifier, which is the mirror. So I'm going to go to edit modifier, mirror, and I'm going to sample this object here. And now when I bring this in, you can see I have a mirrored version. And this piece here is again going to represent the this little area, the little scoop that goes above the tire. So notice that scoop, if I hit Alt Z here, well, it goes from here to the front. So I'm going to hit 1 to go to vertex mode, grab these two, oops, let's make sure we have only this guy selected. Then I'm going to go to 1 for vertex mode. And let's see, maybe we should select, oh, you know what the issue is? I didn't ever go to edit mode. So there we go. So we'll go to 1, we're in edit mode now. I can hit 1 for vertex mode, grab these guys, bring them forward a little bit, bring these back. And what I generally do is I'll move it all the way to where I believe the entirety of that piece is. So I feel like the headlights, the scoop goes something like this, and it goes down into this headlight area. And even if it's a little bit off, I'm actually going to make this a little bit more futuristic or space age. So I'm going to grab these verts and bring them forward. Now, this would actually be a fine area to do a bevel. So I'm going to hit 2 to go to edge mode. And then I'm going to hit Control and B, and that provides me with a bevel. Now, actually, this is exactly what I was talking about when it comes to beveling a face. Notice that we have something called an n-gon, and what that is a face with more than four edges. So you can say I have one edge here, 2, 3, 4, and this gives us 5 edges here. This gives us problems. I'm going to undo that bevel. This gives us problems in the long run because it gives it lighting issues. It can triangulate the mesh weird. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to hit Control R and just really add another loop and bring it right about here. 1 for vertex mode. I'm just going to bring these down, bring this down as well. Actually, this would be great. Remember, we're going very low poly, maybe a little bit forward like this. Bring this in, and then I'll bring this in, and then we'll have just a little bit of a nice scoop that goes all the way down here for the for that part of our wheel well. That's the name of a wheel well. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Just Control R, click inside of there, and just bring this down. Give myself just a little bit of a thing. Let's go to our front view here, and these are way too big. So Alt Z to go to X-ray mode, and I'm gonna bring that in a bunch like that. I'm going to add one more loop in the front here. Control R, click, move that in, and then grab all these verts and pull them down so that I get a little bit of a nice scoop there. So the front of the truck seems to be flush. If I'm looking at my reference here, oops, seems to actually be one big flush piece. I might modify it a little bit. Like I said, this is sort of my own little creation. Actually, we're hitting about 15 minutes in this video, a little bit over 15, so I think this would be a good place to stop, and then what we'll do is we'll continue modeling the truck in the next video. Make sure for now to just save this as G-Truck or something inside that truck folder that we created. So G-Truck. And make sure it's in the same folder where all of your reference and other stuff is.